Hey you guys, welcome back to the channel. It is your girl Alana Simone. First of all, I wanted to welcome you guys in. If you're new to the channel, welcome in. If you've been here for a while, welcome back. So today we're going to be talking about religious manipulation. And so, I think this is really important because it's a thing that happens more often than we think. And so oftentimes I see people turning away from God or really getting turned off from God because of a thing called religious manipulation. And so basically what that is basically when people try to use God and manipulate it, like in a form of manipulation. And so it's manipulation, but they use God in it. So that's why it's religious manipulation. And so usually an example is they start with God say, that you need to do this, or God told me you need to do this. So you're like, oh my gosh, God told them that this is what I need to do. So you're like, oh my God, this is what I need to do. Or sometimes it can be bad, sometimes it can be good. But you just go off of what they say. And so we just really have to be careful with that because everybody who comes and say that they are from God or sent by God is sometimes a lot of times not true. And so that's why one thing that God says in the word is to test the spirit by the spirit. And so if you read the Bible, you can see that in there. He talks about the prophets and how there's false prophets and there's true prophets, and how we are supposed to test the spirit by the spirit to find out the difference. And so sometimes people didn't get that far in the Bible, or they just didn't hear about it, so they never know that. But let me tell you how important that is, because so many times we can feel discouraged, so many times we can feel dismayed because we get a word from someone, or we somebody has told us something or something like that, and they came off as religious, they came off as if they were sent from God. And so we're like, oh my God, they said God. Everybody just uses God. But nobody, if you don't know how to test the spirit by the spirit, you just go off of what they say. And so, oftentimes we can get caught up in situations or hear things from somebody that's not necessarily true. But because they said God said, we're like, oh, well, maybe it must be true because they said God said, so maybe that's true. But we have to realize and understand that there is multiple gods. And so when you interact and talk with people, you have to know and use discernment on who, and ask them, who are they hearing from? Because you have to know there's a difference. There's the one true living God who I talk about on this channel, which his name is Yahweh. And then there's some other gods out here that have a whole bunch of different names. And so, everybody that says they're from God and that God sent them is not necessarily true. And so it's really up to us to know the difference and to really study his word and to really grow closer to him in a relationship, because he starts to increase our discernment. He starts to increase our knowledge of being able to know these things. And so, every time somebody comes to you and they're like, they're sent from God, sometimes it is you have to know, but that's what discernment comes in, and so much more. But anyway, it's just a thing that happens really often. And so I just wanted to address it because it's not right. It's unfortunate how many people get misled or manipulated, especially in the religious aspect, because God's name, they use God's name so vain. Everybody says God, and so people just think that we're talking about the same God, but we're not, and we have to realize that. And so you guys, it's a thing that happens. And so I really want people to start waking up and start learning more. And that's why I really encourage people to read their Bible and really draw close and have a relationship with God, because you'll start to understand these things. You'll start to get more discernment. You'll start to know these things, so you don't easily, when you hear somebody say something, you're like, oh, well, this must be, and then now you're discouraged because they told you something that wasn't even for you, but you didn't have the discernment, or you didn't know how to take it, so you received a word that wasn't even for you. And so we have to understand that every word that is spoken is not for us. And sometimes people can use God. They'll say God, and it can be in a form of manipulation, because most people move when they're like, well, God said it, so, this is it. But we have to really know that we have to use discernment. We have to really seek God for ourselves to know what, people are speaking and what they're saying, because sometimes it can be manipulation and we have to know the difference. And so, you know, I really didn't want to make this video too long, but I just really wanted to make it short and sweet. But I really wanted to address this because it's a thing. It's a thing that happens more often than we think. And so a lot of times people get discouraged or they turn away from God because somebody has said something to them, or really use God in a manipulative way. And so, you know, it's very unfortunate what these people do, because there's people out here. Everybody's not a good person. Like, we just have to understand and know that. But God has given us such great wisdom in our mind, and he has granted us the gift of discernment. And so we have to really unlock that gift and know that gift is placed within us and use it, because sometimes we can avoid getting disappointed. Sometimes we can avoid getting manipulated if we increase our discernment, increase our connection with God, because he'll start speaking to us and allow us to know the difference between somebody that comes from him to somebody who doesn't come from him. And so, you know, as in my walk with God, I've learned that. I've learned how to hear his voice loud and clear. I've learned how to discern very well. And so it's a thing that you just, as you grow with God, it just starts to come more naturally, you know, and it just starts to get and heightened. Like, it can be increased over time. And so your discernment level can be like top tier, like at one point in your life, because you're just so connected. And it's very good. It's a really good feeling, because it really can protect you and save you from a lot of stuff. And so, you guys, if you don't know what discernment is basically like just knowing the difference between good and bad, in a sense. You can like read the Bible, it'll tell you, Google it, it'll tell you more. But yeah, so it's just, if you don't know that, but yeah, just use what God has given us. He has given us gifts freely, and discernment is one of them. So, just watch out for religious manipulation, because it's a real thing out here and it's running rampant in the land. And so I'm here today to speak on it so we can start shutting it down and wake people up. But yeah, so just know that you don't have to be manipulated. God gives us the gift of discernment that we can use to help prevent that. So you guys, thank you so much for being here. I really hope this video encouraged you today, or just gave you some new insight. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.